Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as what if Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
Families in various ninja clans, the Uchiha and the Senju. Two opposing factions arose that fought each other for centuries after the death of Indra and Asura. The conflict ceased to be a matter of legitimate succession, or fulfilling the wish of the sage, to become a matter of establishing dominance. Pride and blessing. Peace never came, as the various noble clans that followed these two houses had their own plans and always continued to foment war. Various powerful individuals, groups and nations started hiring these two factions for their own selfish motives. The era of clan wars. This was the name of the current conflict between the two factions. When the war between Indra and Asura started, most of the world expected the eldest son's faction to win, as he was more powerful and talented than his brother and his supporters. But the Senju proved to be more resilient and intelligent than their brothers. Older hands, as they got alliances from various other factions for their cause with cooperation, marriage, money, and other benefits. Although the Uchiha, despite being the most powerful in combat, they had a fatal flaw that they continued to inherit from their founder, Indra. Superiority. Following in Indra's footsteps and ideology, the Uchiha continued to believe in his skill, dexterity, and sharingan. They were called fire bearers, and it was rumored that they were descendants of dragons, destined to unimaginable greatness or absolute madness. The Uchiha did not form many alliances, unlike the Senju, as they believed that the inferior and smaller clans owed allegiance to Indra and his successors, and that it was their duty to submit to their superiors. This isolated them, but despite this, they continued to survive and fight because their skill with the sharingan had no equal. However, with the passage of centuries and the increase of conflicts, the Uchiha began to lose. His power began to wane as more and more clans joined the Enju, which only served to stoke anger among the Uchiha. In their frantic quest for power, they established the practice of clan members marrying their brothers or cousins. To maintain the purity of their lineage and prevent the alien lineage from corrupting future generations. His madness became so much worse that any clan member who married outside the clan was killed, along with all his children. Instead of killing their enemies, the Uchiha began to kill themselves. The Senju took advantage of this advantage to completely destroy the Uchiha to such an extent that they no longer deserved to equal them in power and dominance. The proud descendants of Indra continued to dwindle until another catastrophe struck them. The sharingan disappeared. It was the worst devastation for the warriors who prided themselves on their powerful eyes. Many researchers and doctors suggested that interclan marriage was the cause of this phenomenon. Others suggested that the Uchiha were simply weakened, among other reasons. Whatever the real reason, it didn't change the fact that the sharingan had disappeared and nothing the Uchiha did managed to restart their cherished Dojutsu among their clan members. Another century passed, and the fall of the Uchiha was still getting worse and worse. It became clear to everyone. The House of the Dragon was dying. Tajima Uchiha was watching a group of boys practicing their martial arts in the open field. There were 5 of them, all with the same armor and a common trait. They were blood brothers. Tajima's 5 children, heirs of the Uchiha house. The proud father smiled as he watched his 2 eldest sons face off in a deadly kenjutsu battle. Despite being only 8 and 7 years old, Madara and Izuna were Tajima's pride. His house could have lost its famous sharingan and much of its world dominance. But this had not diminished the superiority of the Uchiha in ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, kenjutsu, and many other arts. They were proud warriors, and their house still had enough men to continue their legitimate war against the bloodthirsty Enju. Tajima smiled as Madara threw a fireball towards her younger brother, which was countered by a similar attack from Izuna. Madara was Tajima's eldest son and her strongest son. She had inherited all of Tajima's strength and beauty. He was a skilled warrior and worthy of leading the clan in the future. And unlike his younger brothers, he was not weak. Izuna was the second son, 7 years old, and successor of his house if Madara died. Although he was not as strong as his brother, Izuna was well liked by the members of his clan. He was a good leader, an efficient fighter, and a faithful defender of all his brothers. Tajima watched her 3rd and 4th children continue their shuriken practice together. The twins, Yashiro and Inabi, were identical and shared their father's appearance. They were 6-year-olds and good fighters. Although they were too arrogant, before for their own good, a trait that Tajima worried would harm them on the battlefield. And there was his last and youngest son. Tajima couldn't help but feel pain when she saw the young man. With brown hair and a fair complexion, he was the spitting image of his mother and his late wife, Ikaryusha. 5-year-old Naruto Uchiha, the fifth and youngest of Tajima's children, was different from his older brothers. It was not only his appearance, but also what he represented, that made him a match between his own family and the clan. And Kari died giving birth to the child and gave him her name. Tajima deeply loved his wife, and her death shattered him. He tried to be an obedient father to his 5 motherless children, in addition to playing the role of leader of his ancient and noble house. An even more difficult task with the Senju harassing them. Naruto grew up being the spitting image of his mother. He was a kind and happy child who adored his older brothers, although most of them despised him, and blamed the child for the death of his mother. Tajima himself had remained indifferent to his youngest son, taking care of him only for his basic needs. Naruto was not as strong as his brothers, nor did he have the iron will of an Uchiha. He loved too much, forgave too much, and most of the time remained oblivious to the world around him. Naruto would never be someone worthy or useful to the clan. The only reason Tajima hadn't disowned him was because she needed heirs in this treacherous world where children were dying and, above all, because Ikari had made Tajima promise that she would take care of the child. Faced with Tajima's indifference towards the boy, the clan also lost all interest and ignored Naruto Uchiha. He was just a spare heir and a weakling. The strong survive, the weak die. Tajima frowned when Yashiro and Inabi teased her younger brother when he failed to produce a fireball, and ended up coughing until he lost all his lungs. "You fucking wimp." Inabi snapped in disgust. Yashiro stepped forward to hit his brother, who was coughing, but a shadow got in the way. Looking up, Tajima's third son saw his older brother standing in front of him with a piercing look in his dark eyes. "What are you doing?" Izuna asked, and narrowed her eyes when Yashiro clenched his fists while staring at a frightened Naruto. "I'm teaching him a lesson. He's a weakling, and a disgrace to our clan. He can't even perform a simple fireball jutsu," Yashiro said angrily, and shuddered when Izuna looked at him coldly. "He is our brother," Izuna recalled. "He killed Mom." He screamed, and Nabi was furious. Izuna took a step forward, forcing her 2 younger brothers to step back. Tajima was about to intervene when Madara sighed and grabbed the 2 angry children by the neck. "Come, I'll teach you a new jutsu by the lake," the major proposed with a smile. "Really? Nissan?" the 2 excited boys asked with joy in their eyes. Madara was her hero after all, yes. "Then go now." The 2 brothers cheered and ran towards the lake to learn something new from their prodigal brother. Completely ignoring their previous anger towards their younger brother, Madara saw that Izuna was still seething with anger and put a hand on her shoulder. "Let him go, Izuna." "They are children," Madara advised, only to receive a heated look from his closest brother. "Naruto is our brother, Nirasan." Madara saw the frightened and tearful child looking at them. "I didn't hate him like Yashiro and Inabi, but I didn't love him as much either." In that sense, Madara was like his father. They both tolerated Naruto, but they didn't do anything else. Izuna was the only one who cared about the child and took care of him. "It's okay. But don't try to have favorites, Izuna. Yashiro and Inabi are also our brothers," Madara reminded him patiently. "Naruto too." Madara sighed again. Her brother was stubborn and wouldn't give in. "Very well." Having said that, Madara went to meet his 2 brothers who were waiting for him by the lake. Izuna, furious, turned to his father and saw that the man was staring at him. "Do you have something to say, boy?" Tajima asked sternly, and watched the boy clench his fists. "No, father." Izuna turned away from her father and walked towards her younger brother. The young man looked at him with tears in his eyes, and Izuna shuddered at the sight of his burned lips. Oh my god, how stubborn he was. "Mirasan, can you teach me a jutsu, please?" the shy boy asked him. "You're hurt," Izuna said hesitantly, and she saw the boy flinch when he tried to touch her burning lips. "No. I can fight." "Just like you," little Naruto proclaimed with such confidence that it broke Izuna's heart. But the truth was that Naruto did not master ninjutsu. All Uchiha children were required to perform a fireball jutsu as a step into adulthood at the age of 6. In a few weeks, his birthday would come, and he would be obliged to pass. However, Naruto was having difficulties. He was less skilled and stubborn, which caused him to get injured most of the time. But if he failed in the right of way, Izuna feared that the boy would become even more hated in the clan. For the Uchiha never tolerated the weak. The only reason Naruto had a comfortable life was because he was the son of the clan leader. A despised son, but a son after all. I'll show you, but tomorrow. Now we need to heal your wounds, Izuna promised, but the brown-haired boy shook his head. Now, Izuna smiled sarcastically at the boy's childish demand to learn when he seemed about to collapse from exhaustion. That's why Izuna loved her younger brother. He was a stubborn fool, but he never gave up. A boy determined to prove his worth, despite not having the support of his family. Well, I can. But then I won't have time to buy you a ramen, Izuna said with a sneaky smile. If possible, the child seemed to have regained the lost energy, for he literally jumped into the air. Excited, completely forgetting about the cold treatment given to him by his other brothers. Ramen! Naruto shouted with his fist in the air. Izuna chuckled when she saw that smile, happy to see her. Naruto had that quality. A single smile from the boy could take away a day of tiredness from Izuna. Then, when he offered her his back, Izuna's younger brother jumped up happily and grabbed her neck affectionately. You're the best, Nisan. Naruto shouted, almost making Izuna deaf. Oh my god, how loud the kid was. How could Anacha be? Izuna looked at her father, who was watching them with a strange look. Tajima's second son simply gave her a respectful nod before setting off on his way to the village. Happy to participate in his younger brother's endless chat. Naruto observed the vast city built by his ancestors. It was huge, with so many lights and so many people trying to sell so many nice things. He was fascinated to see new toys in a nearby store. But then he remembered that his father had told them that Uchiha played with swords, not with wooden horses. Still, Izuna saw him looking at the wooden horse and bought it for him. For that gesture, he happily kissed his brother's cheek, provoking a laugh in his favorite brother. Naruto felt happy whenever he was with him. Izuna never scolded him, well, maybe when he tried to sneak out at midnight outside the city walls. Those were the only times his brother had been angry with him, warning him that the world was dangerous, especially for Anacha. Naruto didn't know why Izuna said that, but he obeyed his brother. Yashiro and Inabi were always mean to him, teasing him, even trying to hit him whenever they could. Madara would put an end to that as soon as he realized it, but his older brother never talked to him much. And that hurt. Mirasan, Madara doesn't even hate me. Izuna looked at him in surprise as he continued to take them to the infirmary to heal Naruto's burning lips. No. Madara is busy. He is the heir to our house, our future leader. He simply has a lot to do, Izuna said hesitantly. He talks to Yashiro and Inabi, but not to me. I don't like it, Naruto said, his cheeks swollen red from anger. Naru. No. I have you, I don't need it. Neither stupid Yashi-chan, nor Inabaka. Izuna laughed a little at her brother's silly statement. Sometimes he had to remind himself that Naruto was a child and had not yet matured. He had not yet seen the battlefield, something that all his brothers had already done in various ways. Madara and Izuna had fought at the front, even Yashiro and Inabi had fought under their father's guidance. Naruto was the youngest, and, as much as Izuna hated to accept him, he wasn't very strong. Maybe it would be if father and Madara gave it a chance, but it was unlikely that would happen soon. Her family was never the same again after mom died. Izuna loved all her brothers. He respected Madara, took care of Yashiro and Inabi, but most of all he adored his little brother, Naruto. People said that she looked like her mother, and Izuna wanted to believe that her mother would like her to take care of her youngest son. He finally managed to take Naruto to the infirmary and called a doctor to treat his injuries. His brother received immediate attention, as they were the children of the leader of his house. Naruto was very happy playing with his wooden horse, while the doctor finished healing his burns and applied a dope and bandage. He even gave the boy some candies, which earned him a wide smile. Should we go eat ramen? Izuna asked. Yes. Izuna hit her forehead when her younger brother ran out of the infirmary, causing two nurses to lose their balance and fall on their asses. He apologized on behalf of his brother and ran after him. "Not so fast," warned Izuna. His warning came a little late, as Naruto ran into some guards on patrol. They were about to scold him, but then they noticed who he was and looked at him with contempt. Even these disappeared when Izuna approached and glared at them. Izuna smiled when the guards flinched at the sight of him, apologized to his brother, and ran out. They know where their place is. Still, he went ahead and hit his brother gently on the head, making him frown. "Hey, be careful where you're going, little brother," Izuna warned him. Naruto snorted and crossed his hands on his shoulders, sitting face down in the middle of the street. Izuna saw many women and girls falling in love with the young man, and men who looked at him with disapproval for his childish behavior. Izuna touched her forehead. "Then let's run," he said without caring about the disapproving looks of the Uchiha's men. Naruto's smile could have lit up an entire city. Madara found her two brothers chatting and eating at the ramen stand. Well, it was Naruto devouring his third bowl of ramen, while Izuna watched him fondly. As she watched those two interact, Madara couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. He and Izuna were as close as brothers, but the bond Izuna shared with Naruto was something special. Madara didn't know what to feel for her younger brother. He was one of the family, but he still had vague memories of the day his mother died, giving birth to Naruto. He still remembered when she asked him and Izuna, her eldest children, to take care of her remaining children. Madara tried to fulfill her wish. He took care of Yashiro and Inabi in life and in the war, but was not present for Naruto. Perhaps it was his resemblance to his mother or his innocence compared to his hard-hearted clan. Madara did not know how to interact with the boy. She didn't want to be cruel to him like Yashiro and Inabi, but she wasn't excited about the idea of getting closer either. But one thing was for sure. Naruto was an Uchiha and his brother, and Madara would protect him from any harm. He just did not know how to talk to this child. He was not Izuna. With a sigh, he decided to do as he was told. "Izuna." His second brother turned to him, surprised when Madara walked into the ramen stand. Naruto turned pale and instantly plunged his head into his half-empty ramen bowl. Madara left him alone. "Join us, Mirasan," Izuna invited with a smile. "Father wants you to accompany him to a meeting with the elders," Madara informed. "Okay, let me take Naru home," and Madara shook her head. "Now. And don't argue because you know you can't." "Go, I'll take him home," Madara offered, and saw that Izuna wasn't comfortable with the idea, but when father said something, he did it without asking any questions. Izuna nodded. Madara saw that Naruto also wanted to run away, but Izuna whispered something to him that made the boy nod. Before he left, Tajima's second son turned to his eldest son. "Try to talk to him, Madara." "He's our brother," Izuna suggested kindly. "Izuna. Takashi died 2 days ago, on a mission. I was only 6 years old, brother. What's your point?" Madara asked sharply. Life is too short to regret. Even Madara was stunned, and remained motionless, even when his brother left. Izuna sometimes said things like this that showed her true intellect beyond her age. This made Tajima's eldest son stare at his younger brother for a long while. With another sigh, Madara sat down next to the child. Despite being barely 3 years apart, Madara felt that they were very different. They were so different. Still, he had to at least try for Izuna's sake. "I heard you got injured during training," Madara asked calmly. "Yes, Nirasan. Just a little bit." Madara shuddered as she heard the fear in the boy's voice. It had terrified him so much. "How is your training going with Shuriken?" Madara asked, and this time the boy smiled. "Very well. I can hit 3 targets right in the middle at once," Naruto replied excitedly. Madara smiled slightly. Maybe his brother had some hope, after all. "Would you like to show it to me when we get home? I'm free for the rest of the day," Madara suggested. And she could see that the child was nervous and decided to relax him a little. "If you prove what you're saying, I'll teach you a jutsu." Madara turned pale when he saw the hungry look that was drawn in Naruto's excited eyes. He wanted to learn from his older brother, whom everyone called a prodigy, and he had longed for it so much that Madara was saddened. "I will. Then you will teach me a cool jutsu." The boy asked him. Yes. Before he could say anything, Naruto threw the food money Izuna had left on the counter and ran out. Madara banged her head on the table. How could I forget that the little rascal liked to run at the slightest opportunity? He ran after his brother. Madara was impressed. He never imagined that his younger brother had such an ability. Naruto had always had difficulties with ninjutsu, something embarrassing for an Uchiha, but the boy possessed another dangerous skill. He was an expert in kenjutsu. The way he held his tanto, his firm but flexible stance, his excellent speed, and the way he made his weapon dance in the air. The fact that he forced Madara to really push himself in the fight was a testament to his ability. His younger brother took 3 shurikens out of his bag and threw them at Madara. The major easily deflected the attacks and saw how his brother took advantage of the precious second to get closer. Madara was expecting a quick attack, but what happened next surprised him even more. His brother tried to sweep his legs. Madara quickly jumped up and lowered his tanto, causing a high-pitched sound when Naruto stopped him with his own tanto. Madara launched a kick to his opponent's chest, which the guy dodged at the last second. He had no respite, for Madara unleashed a dozen shurikens at him. Naruto, in turn, took his similar weapons, jumped in the air and counterattacked, causing Kadashuriken to collide with his brother's. Taking a turn in the air, he aimed a pointed cut down with his goal towards a surprised Madara, only to receive a reverse kick that sent him to the ground spitting. She tried to stand up again to show her brother that she wasn't done yet, but her chest hurt. You did good. Naruto smiled at the unusual compliment he received from his older brother. She even helped him recover and fulfilled her promise, showing him a jutsu that complemented his skills. You're good with guns. Your accuracy is good, so let me show you how to make your shuriken attack more lethal and longer range, Madara explained. Naruto nodded obediently. Madara showed him the hand seals, a set of 3 signs that Naruto quickly learned. Then, Madara told him the amount of chakra he should use to make his attack more lethal. All of Tajima's children had already been taught chakra control exercises in the hope of turning them into true warriors at an early age. And now it was proving useful. Naruto released his one and only shuriken, and then performed the hand seals that Madara had taught him, infusing chakra. He was surprised when his only shuriken turned into 7 more replicas and hit more targets. Fine. Make your hand signals faster. On the battlefield, a delay of even a second could cost you your life, Madara warned. Yes, Nirasan. Madara nodded and turned to walk away now that his job was done when Naruto's words shocked him. You worry about me? If it wasn't for her self-control, Madara didn't know what she would have done upon hearing those words, so she chose a standard response. You're my brother. As your older brother, it is my duty to protect you. Naruto smiled at him happily. Madara didn't understand why this guy was so happy. I had only done a simple jutsu for him that anyone else could have done just as well. But Naruto's smile became evident when he received a mountain full of gold. The child was strange. He was distracted from his thoughts when he saw Izuna enter the compound and angrily head towards his room. He looked furious. Naruto, go get some rest in your room, Madara ordered. But now, the boy snorted, earning a raised eyebrow from Madara. 2 seconds later, Naruto instantly ran to his room, earning a faint smile from Madara. Maybe Izuna wasn't so wrong about him. Still, he decided to let Izuna rage. When his second brother got angry, it was better to leave him alone, and Madara sensed who might have angered him. But he couldn't help but wonder why Izuna was so angry. A week later, Madara found his answer while on the battlefield, alongside a large number of his clan members and all his brothers. Tajima was at the head of the force of 300 Uchiha, ready to face his sworn enemies. In front of him stretched the Great Tama River, a key strategic water source that constituted the livelihood of several nearby villages. A source that had been controlled by the Senju for more than a century, and that it would soon be in the possession of the Uchiha. The loss of this river would greatly damage the interests of the Senju and secure a key victory for the Uchiha. That would allow them to get more contracts from the wealthy feudal lords who had recently been flocking to the Senju. He stared at his children, all of them ready to participate in the battle. Madara was serene and ready as always. Yashiro and Inabi were eager to fight to finish off the sworn enemies of their house. Izuna was furious. Tajima's second son, instead of staying by his father's side, was protecting his younger brother. Naruto's face was a mixture of apprehension, fear, and excitement. He was a 5-year-old boy, and it would normally be a few months before he joined his siblings in this endless conflict. But Tajima had seen Naruto's fight with the ninja, and he doubted that his son would be able to learn the fireball jutsu before his rite of passage arrived. If he failed, he would dishonor his family in the midst of his clan. So Tajima had brought him here in the hope that the green boy would see the dangers that awaited him and how he should amend himself to be a better Uchiha like himself. Brothers. If Naruto performed well, his clan members could ignore his lack of ninjutsu prowess, and if he died, he would at least die with honor. And somewhat in hand. It would be a real Uchiha. Izuna was furious with him and argued daily to overturn his decision, but Tajima had made a decision. His youngest son would become a real Uchiha or die as such on this battlefield. Naruto, the nervous kid who had been biting his lip in silent anticipation, looked at his favorite brother and saw him smiling reassuringly. Prick them with the pointed end. Naruto smiled and nodded as he firmly gripped his tanto short with his small hands. Soon he heard the war horns sounding on the other side of the river and saw movement in the forest. Moments later, an army of armored warriors pounced on him with their swords and weapons. The Uchiha responded to his war cries with equal fervor. As they charged, Naruto stood by Izuna's side and noticed that although the enemy was wearing armor, the men of his clan did not have that protection. Instead, the Uchiha wore their war clothes and rushed into battle. For some reason, Naruto found it strange and stupid. He was mesmerized when a black rain rose in the sky, and he noticed that it was a rain of kunai and shuriken descending on his side. The Uchiha deflected the incoming attacks with ease, but some were not quick enough to counter the huge raining storm from the sky, and they fell. Naruto watched in horror as his older brother Inabi fell to the ground, clutching his throat where a sharp kunai lay buried. He stood motionless waiting for his evil older brother to get up, but Inabi remained still, even as a puddle began to form around his corpse. Her brother was dead. The battlefield was engulfed in chaos, with the sound of guns clashing, men screaming and unleashed jutsus filling the air. Men and women were fighting each other, trying to kill each other with as much cruelty and ferocity as possible. Naruto saw Yashiro crying in pain when he saw his twin brother die. The older Uchiha roared fiercely and jumped up to punch a teenage Senju in the belly. Yashiro howled and attacked 2 more Senju, surprised by the attack, brutally slashing them to death before 3 swords pierced his torso. Yashiro smiled faintly as he dropped a crib and from his bag. There was an explosion that destroyed Yashiro along with the men who finished him off. Naruto stood transfixed watching his second brother die as the wreckage fell over in anger. It swept through his body like a tidal wave as he grabbed his tanto and ran towards the nearest Senju. Ignoring the armored chest, Naruto brutally hit him on the knees, the enemy scream as he fell to the ground. The last thing he saw was Naruto's tanto. Hitting his head, Naruto had to deflect a dozen shurikens who intended to kill him. In his rage he charged forward. The Senju woman blinked as he jumped in the air and tried to raise his weapon, but not fast enough. As Naruto inflicted a fatal wound to the neck and fell. His mind was in a daze as he kept killing isolated Senju warriors with the help of his clan members, never showing them a shred of mercy. Yashiro and Inabi were always mean to him, but they were his brothers. And these bad men killed them. He turned when he felt an imminent attack and managed to stop a goal that cut off his head. Finally, she recovered from her anger and realized that she was a young woman. He had blonde hair that barely reached his shoulders and bright green eyes full of anger and fear. His small body was covered by a heavy Senju armor, and he was the same age as him. Naruto roared in anger, which made her shudder, and he took advantage of that moment to disarm her, followed by a brutal kick that sent her to the ground. Covered with evidence of the battle, his eyes alight with righteous fury, and he was soaked with the vitality of his enemies. He charged towards his new enemy to end his life. He roared as he raised his gun to attack the Y. Interrupted because she was crying. Pure, crystalline tears were running because of her plump blonde cheeks. Her green eyes looked at him with fear and pleading. His hands were shaking when he saw her crying, a girl his own age, and he wanted to kill her. But then he noticed the Senju emblem on his armor, and remembered that his clan members had killed 2 of his brothers minutes earlier. Tsunade. He looked up and saw 4 angry young men rushing towards him. There was a murderous desire in his eyes as he saw Naruto's Tanto hovering over the girl. With an angry growl, Naruto faced those 4 head-on, ignoring the defeated girl. The first to find him was an older boy, with silver hair and cold eyes, who made Naruto tremble by clashing their swords. He was stronger and pushed Naruto, while the other guys came up to kill him. Naruto's eyes widened as he knew he wouldn't be able to evade him. He would die just like Yashiro. Until there was a wild gust of air as a shadow jumped between the Senju's swords that were struggling to defend themselves. "You will not kill my brother, Senju," Izuna shouted furiously. Naruto smiled in relief when his brother kicked the silver-haired boy who was pushing him. The Senju narrowed their eyes as they observed the new enemy, while Izuna shot a quick glance at her brother. "Stay behind me, Naru." The boy nodded and stood behind his older brother. Izuna brandished her sword as the Senju boys surrounded them. It was the silver-haired boy who attacked again, with Izuna confronting him. Naruto blocked the swords of the other 2 boys, one with half black and half white hair, and the other with brown hair. With all his strength, Naruto pushed the 2 into Ju, making them stumble a bit. Suddenly, another older Uchiha rushed towards the battle and attacked the brown-haired Senju on the neck from behind. Kawarama. The Senju collapsed on the ground when his oldest comrade, a 10-year-old boy with jet black hair, hit the older Uchiha in the chest. With an anguished scream, the sudden deaths surprised the fighters on both sides, including Izuna. The silver-haired Senju snatched Izuna's sword and hit him in the chest. Naruto cried for his brother, who growled and punched his attacker, making him stagger. The mixed-haired Senju boy tried to attack Izuna again, only to receive a quick blow to his eye that sent him crashing, screaming in pain. Naruto ran towards his brother, managing to catch him in his tiny arms as they both fell to the ground. Izuna. The Senju were already hovering near their dead comrade and the wounded one who had just lost an eye courtesy of Izuna's sword. Izuna coughed and carefully pressed her trembling hand to her chest, only to see her come back soaked. "His blood." "Izuna!" Naruto shouted. Tajima's second son looked vaguely at his brother, who was crying hysterically. Izuna coughed, but managed to smile and laid her stained hand on her dear brother's cheek. Everything was getting so dark, the noises of the battle were fading away, and only her brother's screams filled Izuna's ears. She looked at the boy whom she had loved more than anything in life and smiled. "Be happy, little brother." Naruto froze when his brother's hand fell from his cheek, his chest became still, and his eyes closed. With that smile permanently etched on his face. "Izuna, Mirasan, get up please." "No, I'll get out of the walls. I'll do whatever you say, please." He shouted, but Izuna did not answer. He shook his brother over and over, just to get silence. Naruto let out a cry of anguish and sank his head into his brother's stained chest. Her loud sobs made her small body tremble, and the noises of the battle died down. She cried so hard that she screamed, but Izuna never answered. "No." She looked up hesitantly, her face smeared, and saw Madara a few meters away, a horrified expression etched on her smeared face. Tajima's eldest son roared as a surge of chakra was unleashed from his body, causing all the nearby warriors to fall to their knees. The anger in Madara's eyes was huge as he charged and cut the nearest Senju in half. The younger Senju who had attacked Naruto began to retreat, taking their dead and wounded comrades even further. Naruto saw that dozens of older Senju had focused on Madara and the threat he posed, and they were charging towards him. With a strength he never thought he had, Naruto got up and charged towards his last brother. He was not as strong as his brothers, but he was faster. He showed a skill when passing by older warriors, mercilessly cutting off their legs with his goal. Madara unleashed a carnage on the battlefield, killing everything and anyone who crossed his path with his sword, great balls of fire, and shuriken jutsu. Naruto protected his furious brother's rear guard with the help of other Uchiha who joined the carnage with righteous fury. To Malara, the Uchihas joined in that battle cry, with Naruto leading the new charge, following his older brother's lead. It was as if a tidal wave had been unleashed, annihilating row after row of warriors in Ju. Madara's fury had no limits, and no shinobi could cope with it. Those who tried it lost their lives instantly. Naruto did not know how long he fought, nor how many he killed, nor how many of his own clan members died in the attack. He was so angry and hurt. Another horn sounded on the battlefield, and seconds later, the Senju began to flee deep into the forest where they came from. "Run, you tree huggers!" shouted a Uchiha, Victoria. "Fire!" Naruto collapsed to the ground gracelessly and remained motionless. He felt pain in his left arm and left cheek. But he didn't care, because Izuna was dead. Yashiro and Inabi too. His brothers. Many Uchihas crowded around him and lifted him up on their shoulders, calling him a hero, the young dragon, the brave one. However, they had to fight their way through as Madara returned to the charge with the desperation reflected in his eyes. His gaze finally fixed on his youngest and last living brother, and he ran towards them. Naruto was still numb when he felt himself being lowered to the ground moments before a strong pair of arms grabbed him in a fierce hug. Slowly he looked up and saw that it was Madara, with tears in her eyes. Whatever difference the two brothers had in life was drowned out in the pain they were feeling at that moment. Naruto collapsed in Madara's arms and cried as his brother hugged him. It was at this scene that Tajima Uchiha arrived and saw the expressions of amazement and surprise on the faces of her clan members. Her own eyes opened as she saw her eldest and youngest son hugging each other fiercely, while crying tears of sadness. "Impossible," Tajima whispered as she looked into her children's eyes. They were red with tomes. The Sharingan was reborn. Madara walked silently with the rest of his clan as he saw the gates of his hometown approaching. The Uchiha were in a very good mood after achieving their biggest victory in a decade, and, above all, after witnessing the rebirth of their famous lineage. That had been the only reason that outweighed the losses they suffered. They could have achieved victory, but the price was too high. Madara had left for the battle with 300 men from his clan and 4 of his brothers. He was now returning with less than half of that army and the bodies of his 3 beloved younger brothers. His only consolation was that he had not lost all his brothers. His younger brother was still in this world, and that gave Madara the strength to fight and protect him. He and Naruto had never been the best of friends, but after losing what they had, Madara couldn't help but worry about the little one. It was all that was left for Madara, apart from her power-hungry father, who was unfazed by the sight of the corpses of 3 of his children. They died with honor, and their sacrifice returned the Sharingan to us. There's no need to shed tears, guys. Madara couldn't help but sigh with satisfaction when he saw his father with a black eye thanks to Naruto. The boy, who had acted with such humility and submission all his life, was enraged to hear his father say such a thing. When Izuna's corpse had not even cooled down, he jumped out before Madara could stop him. Even Tajima had not anticipated such a move until Naruto proved that he was the dragon's blood, and Tajima angered him. Tajima didn't take the insult kindly, and tried to hit back at her son, only to be paralyzed as he saw the hatred and anger in those little Sharingan eyes. That hesitation gave Madara time to pull her brother aside and apologize on his behalf. The young dragon, Madara watched his brother, who was walking silently by his side, carrying the jar containing the ashes of his 3 brothers. The boy was so silent, with an empty look, a permanent melancholy etched on his young face. Madara had only seen the corpses of his brothers, but Naruto was the one who saw them die one after another before his eyes. Izuna's death had broken something inside him, and yet it had also ignited something dangerous. The roars and cheers of the waiting crowd put him out of his thoughts. Despite what she had suffered last week, Madara couldn't help but feel a great relief to see her home and her people. Tajima nodded to the cheers and began to deliver a rather promising speech about many more victories against the Enju. And when he presented the rebirth of the Sharingan between his 2 sons, the whole clan was speechless. Madara was stunned to see the ovation that erupted after the announcement, which was even greater than that of his victory. Some members of the clan, both old and young, even cried when they realized that their beloved Sharingan had returned to their veins. It was a historic occasion, and his father was basking in all that praise and glory, his dark eyes shining with even greater ambition. Then he pointed to his 2 sons. My 2 sons gave us the victory, and together they will help our house to conquer the whole world. Today, before the gods, swear allegiance and service to Madara Uchiha, the invincible dragon, and Naruto Uchiha, the young dragon. The future of the Uchiha house. Madara's eyes widened as, without hesitation, his entire clan knelt before him. By activating her Sharingan, she saw all her hopes and dreams with her new eyes. They trusted him to regain lost glory and obtain justice. And I wouldn't fail them. He looked at his father and saw that the man was watching him with absolute pride and confidence. Madara remembered seeing his brothers and the members of his clan die at the hands of those Senjus bastards, and felt his anger and determination grow. I will bring fire and blood to the Senjus, he roared, raising his sword in the air. The clan roared alongside him and praised him over and over again. It was time for her brother to step forward, the baby of the family, the one who had always been ignored by the clan, but who was now the center of attention. But one look into Naruto's eyes showed Madara that his brother was different. His next words proved it. We lost almost 150 of our own in this battle, including 3 of my brothers, Naruto said sadly. As Tajima felt her blood boil. People will sing songs about his sacrifice. Tajima refused, and she saw the disappointment in her son's eyes. Yes, but my brothers and our dead warriors will never listen to them. That shocked all the members of his clan to contemplate the numerous jars containing the ashes of their fallen. The excitement died down as he realized the price that was paid, and Naruto took a step forward. We fight without strategy like wild animals. We fight without armor, believing in our superiority. We are powerful warriors, but also men. We bleed and die like the Senju. If it wasn't for the sacrifice of my brothers and the courage of Madarani Izan, we would have lost, Naruto explained sincerely. To the great surprise, horror and bitterness that emerged in his people. That's enough, boy, Tajima growled. He was completely silent when Naruto activated his 2 Tamo Sharingan and glared at him. The boy quickly turned to his people, who had just received a strong reality shock. That destroyed all the plans Tajima had drawn up for the near future. A single victory does not make us winners. This war is far from over, and, if we want to defeat the Enju, we must fight smarter, we must outsmart them. Both on the battlefield and off it. We are Uchiha, the strongest and noblest house in this world. We are the blood of the dragon, and together we will recover everything we have lost, but only if we fight together. Only if we learn from our mistakes, the boy shouted like the dragon he was. A stunned silence reigned as Naruto unleashed his Tanto to lift it into the air. The determination and courage in those Sharingan eyes attracted the attention of the entire clan, much to Tajima and Madara's surprise. Are you with me? Madara feared that his brother had told too many truths that his people were not prepared to hear. But he was mistaken to notice movement among the warriors who had fought on the battlefield. Madara recognized the 3 boys who were the first to kneel, followed by several dozen more. Naruto-sama is telling the truth, and I believe him. My sword is under your command, now and always, Shisui Uchiha promised. Earning a nod from the surprised young man who wasn't expecting any support. I promise you my life, young dragon, Itachi Uchiha promised. The last guy raised his sword, causing the rest of the clan to quickly follow him. The young dragon. Kagami Uchiha shouted. Naruto remained motionless watching his people, who pledged allegiance to him without hesitation. Tajima was furious, but it was Madara who opened his eyes wide as he saw a glimpse of something in his younger brother, Izuna. His younger brother was not weak, for he had inherited Izuna's will. And as the eldest, Madara had to protect him, because Naruto was his younger brother, and only one from that day on. With a smile, Madara joined her people, to support her brother for the first time in her life. Tajima watched her young son, alone and standing by the lake. He was very different from the inspirational leader who had begun to win the support of his people. Madara was starting to gain popularity among the older generation, but Naruto had also gained quite a following among the young, with the heirs of 3 powerful Uchiha families giving their lives to him. Naruto was different. He always had been since he learned to speak. That boy is something else, isn't he? A soft voice asked. Tajima turned to look at her only brother still living in this world. Naori was still as beautiful as ever, with long, wavy purple hair that reached to her waist. Her skin was lighter. That of Tajima, and her hourglass figure had made her a much-desired figure by many in her clan. However, he had not married despite having turned 19. He himself was only 26 years old, a rather advanced age in his world, where few passed 30 due to constant wars. Her sister had inherited all the grace and beauty of her mother, while Tajima had followed in her father's footsteps to become the current leader of her house. Naori had been a fighter until she lost her only lover at the hands of the Sarutobi clan. This made her lose the will to fight, and she retired. But despite Tajima's concerns, he had proved to be very useful in managing the clan's administration. She was also the representative of the clan among his few allies, and she was often absent for months to keep those alliances alive. And he only allowed himself to relax by her side. So when she put her hand on his arm and hugged him, Tajima did not resist, because only now, when it was just him and his sister, he allowed himself to remember his 3 deceased children. They had died as true shinobi, and he would make sure that their sacrifice would be remembered by his people. "I'm sorry, brother," she whispered sadly. "Don't dishonor my children, Naori," Tajima warned, but her tone was neither harsh nor cold. They were children, brothers. He broke the embrace gently and looked at her closely. She should be married by now, giving birth to her next generation. But of course, her sister had always been a crazy woman, and only the death of her lover had robbed her of her passion. In that sense, he was not very different from Naruto, because they both did what they wanted. She touched his swollen eye and laughed as he told her that Naruto had hit him. Tajima's eyes twitched. "Do you think it's funny?" He growled irritably. "Only you can blame yourself, brother. Never provoke a dragon, let alone an enraged one," he chided, looking at his nephew, who was meditating alone. Tajima scoffed. "He's young and dumb." She stared at him for a long while until finally he sighed and admitted another true fact. "But he has a sharp mind. It's very irritating, but it's a real dragon. I never thought that my youngest son would awaken our cherished gaze, and that gives me hope. But he's terrible with ninjutsu," Tajima said bitterly. She narrowed her eyes when her dear sister had that same funny twinkle in her eyes. "Brother, he can be quite silly sometimes," he joked. "Be careful," he warned her as she raised an eyebrow. "Or what? Will you hurt me? Your only sister." Tajima clenched her teeth tightly, but didn't say anything else. Because he was right. Despite the flaws of their house, their one great quality was that they genuinely cared about their loved ones. This had often led them to great follies and suffering, but it had also kept them stronger. The Senju were not the only ones who knew the love for their kind. The Uchiha simply found it difficult to express such emotions due to their rigid customs and the harshness of their society. And this was even more evident to Tajima in her relationship with Naruto. "Madara is your heir and the one to lead the clan in the future. But he will need his brother, now more than ever. However, boys are different. You take Madara under your wing, and I'll take Naruto under mine," he offered. "No. They are my children, and I will train them," he said firmly, but she simply pointed to the black eye that her youngest son gave her. "Young dragons are dangerous creatures, brother. You've done well to deal with Madara and the rest of your children, but Naruto is wild. He looks more like me, and the more you try to suppress him, the more he will reveal himself and burn everyone around him. It needs a different touch," she insisted, as he growled. "You'll only make it softer." The cold look he received from his sister made him regret his words. Much of her power came from the alliances and business relationships she maintained for her household, providing money, resources and support that allowed them to fight the Enju. Naori was gentle and kind, but ruthless to those who betrayed her, including her brother. "I'm sorry," he said reluctantly. She gave him a relaxed smile that dispelled his bitterness. Naori never boasted about the power she had in her hands and was simply content to support him from the shadows, as long as he gave her the respect she deserved. They were completely different, but that didn't make him love her any less. "Okay, take care of the kid." "God knows I can't," he muttered, earning a brief laugh from her. "I promise, brother." Madara found him sitting by the lake, even after the moon appeared in the cloudy sky. The boy tensed when he felt the approaching presence, but relaxed a little when he saw that it was his older brother. She sat down next to the boy who still hadn't said a word, and Madara put a lunchbox in his arms. "Eat," he insisted. "I'm not hungry," Naruto protested, and noticed a similar lunchbox on his brother's lap. "Big brother." Madara's eyebrows twitched at the challenge, but of course, she didn't expect anything else. His brother was stubborn, after all. Izuna would have known how to convince him, but he was gone. And now it was left to Madara the responsibility of taking care of this child. "It's okay. Then I won't eat either," he growled, and threw his lunchbox into the lake. Naruto's eyes opened comically as he gasped, which soon turned into an angry growl as he stared at his brother. An act that would have seemed strange to him just a few days ago, but they were no longer the same guys. "Baka, Eniki." He spat, which only made Madara smile broadly as he lay down on the wooden bridge. "If you don't want to eat, that's fine. But I won't eat without you either. I don't care." Madara chuckled at Naruto's childish speech while cursing him several times. It made him forget the pain of missing his dead brothers. And maybe Naruto felt the same way. Still, Naruto showed his stubbornness by not touching the lunchbox that Madara brought him. That was until his stomach roared loudly. The boy's cheeks flushed as he looked away from Madara's laughing face. He gently ruffled her hair so that she would return his gaze. "And Zuna," I said no. His voice died down in his throat as he saw that it was Madara, who was looking at him sadly. The two brothers were silent for a long while until Naruto opened the lunchbox and offered the refreshing meal to Madara. The boy still did not look Madara in the eyes, but the gesture said it all. With a smile, Madara took the spoon and grabbed the rice. But instead of eating it himself, as Naruto wanted, he offered the food to the child. Naruto looked back at her, but Madara didn't flinch. The aroma of fresh food was too much for the little one, who had not eaten anything since the morning, and finally took his first bite. They ate in silence. Madara helped Naruto eat, and he did the same. This gave her peace, and allowed her to forget her own pain, while concentrating on her brother. But Naruto's next question surprised him. "Brother, is there any way to bring them back? A jutsu? A technique?" The hopeful boy asked, looking at his prodigal brother with such despair that it made Madara sad. "They're all gone, Naru. I'm sorry." He felt really bad for having dashed hopes. Dances of the child, but Madara knew that it was not possible. His brothers were dead, their bodies reduced to ashes, as the custom commanded. "I miss them," he whispered. "Even Inabi and Asiro?" Madara asked curiously, knowing that the twins had not been kind to the boy. "Yes. They were my brothers, all of them." Madara's heart melted at hearing those simple words, and she put the lunchbox aside to hug her younger brother and bring him closer. To his surprise, Naruto didn't give in and snuggled up next to Madara. "I miss them too. And I'm sorry I wasn't there for you," Madara said, now realizing that she had been wrong to ignore her little brother for so long. Naruto didn't say anything, which made Madara panic. "Just don't leave me." Madara held back her own tears as she hugged her little brother even tighter. "Never," he promised. However, even as he said that, an amused smile appeared on his lips, one that Naruto didn't fail to notice. "Stop being depressed and worrying all the time, or I'll smack you in the head," Madara joked, only to receive a smile from her brother. "How are you going to hit me if you are fat and slow?" Madara blinked and looked at himself to see if he had put on weight, only to find that he was thin and fit. He also noticed that the weight of his brother, who was standing next to him, disappeared, followed by a small stone that hit his head. Madara's eyes twitched at the sight of her brother. Little guy standing at the lake, laughing out loud at the prank he had played on his big brother, Brat. Naruto screamed as Madara roared and chased after him. He ran faster and faster, but Madara finally jumped on him, causing them to lose control of the chakra. And both ended up crashing into the frozen lake. He swam back to the surface and breathed in fresh air only to see Madara waiting for him. He swallowed saliva. But his brother laughed. And Naruto laughed along with him, forgetting about the pain in their respective hearts. Unbeknownst to both brothers, Naori and Tajima smiled from their perch in the trees. The next day, Naruto was surprised to see her. He had hardly any vague memories of his aunt in his short life. She remembered his floral scent and his kind eyes, how he told her stories at night, even if they were rare and told. He remembered crying for her when she left. Izuna had told him that she would come back one day, but he hadn't believed it, and he had forgotten about her, which made him feel guilty. At least her smile was kind and welcoming as she gently cupped his cheek. "You've grown up a lot," he commented. "Hello?" Naori frowned at his obedient response. It wasn't the nephew she remembered, but of course, he had been away for almost 2 years, and, knowing Tajima, this boy would rarely have interacted with the opposite gender. He cursed his rigid brother again, because his task had become even more difficult. It would have been better if this discomfort did not exist between them. "Since you have awakened your Sharingan, Tajima has seen fit that I take over your training, while he does the same with Madara," he said patiently, as his face darkened. Oh, that was all he said, unable to hide the betrayal of his father ignoring him again to favor his older brothers. But I shouldn't have expected anything else. Naori knelt down at his height and gently grabbed his cheeks, forcing him to look into her eyes. It was hard for him to believe that he still retained such kindness despite what he had seen. He wanted to train them together, but I asked him to. "To me," she said with a smile, as he opened his eyes wide, surprised and with a glimmer of hope. It pained her to see him clinging to the little crumbs of love and care from her own family. But that only reaffirmed her in her determination to make amends for this mistake. "Really, Obasan?" he asked Naruto, and he saw that she frowned upon hearing the term. He was 19 years old. "Yes. And you will call me only Naori," he informed. But she tapped him on the forehead, which earned him a scream, followed by a grimace that turned into a mischievous smile. When she did the same to him with her little finger, Naori smiled to see his triumphant expression. Maybe his wild nephew was still alive there after all. "I'm glad you're back." "I missed you," he said cheerfully. "Me too." He hugged him, thinking that his own son would have had the same brown hair as him if Itami had lived. It hurt her every day to think about her late lover and the family they had wished to have. When they separated, she gave him a piece of paper that he looked at curiously. "What is it?" he asked. "Tajima told me about your problems with fire ninjutsu." He cringed and looked away embarrassed, but she grabbed his hand and made him look at her. "It is not necessary that everyone has the same types of chakra. Not all Ukiyas are masters of fire," he suggested, earning his scowl. "But I'm a dragon." She laughed kindly at his silly remark. The obsession of his clan to proclaim themselves descendants of that mythical creature that may or may not have existed was very strong. "Well, your little dragon. Then I would like you to pour your chakra on the paper," he instructed. "Why is that?" He swallowed when his eyebrows twitched in annoyance, but unlike his older twin brothers, she didn't hit him on the head. "Do it, please. You'll be surprised." Well, hesitantly, he poured a little of his chakra into the strange paper, visibly worried and excited by the result. He frowned when half of the paper got wet and the other half crumpled. When he looked at his aunt, he saw her quite surprised. "What does it mean?" he asked curiously. "It means you are a water and lightning type user. You can still use the other 3 types of chakra and their jutsus, but it will be a challenge. But water and lightning are your forte, something you can really master," he explained. "But I shouldn't have an uke here. Are you a fire user?" Naruto asked with a frown. "If we all used fire, it would be easy for the enemy to defeat us. We need diversity in our ranks and in attacks. Madara is an exceptional user of fire and wind. With this, you can complement your brother on the battlefield and protect him." Naori saw that his careful explanation shocked him, and his frown cleared. He still wanted to master fire, but linking his ability over water and lightning with that of protecting his older brother had made him more receptive to his different power. "What kind of guy are you?" "Fire and lightning. But I also know good water jutsus, but mastering it will be your job." "But I don't see why with your Sharingan you could have such a difficulty." "Then let's get to work." Naori blinked as she screamed excitedly before running towards the lake to start her training. The kid was hyperactive, but that could be beneficial for his training too. What I also wanted to tell him was that in addition to his combat training, he would also take over his teaching in clan politics and the art of diplomacy. Something Tajima wouldn't be able to teach her children in 1,000 years. Madara didn't have the patience or tact needed for soft skills. He was more of a warrior. But Naruto had a gift with words, and this ability, if properly developed, could be beneficial to his clan in the future. Madara would be the next leader of his clan, but if the Uchiha were to win, they would need his diplomatic and reasonable brother to gather new allies and also bring the lost back to their side. It was the only way they could weaken and defeat the Senju. With those thoughts in mind, Naori walked towards her nephew, in whom she could see her successor. Naori watched with surprise as her nephew followed his hand seals perfectly, without making a single mistake. His dark red eyes were watching his movements intently and capturing them masterfully. I had heard stories about the Sharingan and his power, but now I saw him in person. She threw a small water dragon at him, and he replicated her action by throwing a smaller version of his own water dragon. The two beasts collided fiercely, but his power over the water triumphed, and his beast was defeated. Still, she did not give him a break and rushed straight at him. Their swords collided then, and she used all her strength, but he stopped her blows easily. He did not try to overwhelm her, as it was useless given his superiority, but his speed was dangerous. He knew he was smaller and used it to his advantage, targeting his legs and even his unforgiving bottom. Suddenly, he pounced on her legs, making her jump in the air by reflex. That's when she made the mistake of looking him in the eye. She just froze. The next second, a sword was pointed at his heart, and his triumphant smile was clearly visible on his face. I win. Is that so? He was paralyzed as he heard her voice echoing behind his back, and a sharp sword pointed at his neck. The Naori in front of me vanished into smoke. Shadow clone. Damn it. He cursed, earning himself a blow to the head. You did good. But you lack experience. Don't get cocky just because you have the Sharingan, because your enemy will always have his own traps. And always make sure to decapitate an enemy at the first opportunity. Limbs and organs can be lost, but they can't stop a warrior. But losing her head would be the end of her, she warned, removing the cradle and the neck. He turned and saw her soaked firm head to toe. Her long purple hair was completely wet, and her dress clung to her feminine figure. She blushed and looked away. Naori arched an eyebrow at his reaction even more when he turned around. Naruto, what are you doing? He asked seriously. Well, it's not honorable, he stammered, making her smile. Who would have thought that the brat had decency, unlike most of the men in his clan? But his honor was his flaw, and he could kill him. Have you ever seen a naked woman? He asked, wondering what his brother had trained his children in. Kunoichi had been the death of many great warriors with his seduction. No. It's disgusting. I couldn't stop laughing when I heard his comment. What a kid, one day he would regret saying something like that, and he would say the opposite. Naori was sure, but that would be for another time. Still, she couldn't resist the opportunity to tease him more. She was adorable. Why do you think that? I could feel his frown being pressed on this awkward topic. So he improved the deal. Answer me, and I'll teach you something new, she offered, and he turned hesitantly. Their gaze was still fixed on the lake that stretched out below them. The child loved to learn more. I know, your chest is weird, huh? And maybe, he said, and that no you have, he blushed crimson, unable to finish his words despite his generous offer. Naori smiled, but patted him gently on the head. It's okay. Maybe one day you will change your mind. But always be careful with women, Naruto. They can give life, but also take it away. You are honorable in that respect, and I want you to stay that way to prevent you from making mistakes, he warned. Cool, he replied, not fully understanding her meaning, but deciding to take her advice anyway. She saw the afternoon sun shining brightly, along with the moaning of her stomach as she scratched the back of her head. Come, we'll have lunch, she offered as her eyes lit up. Ramen? She smacked her forehead at his unhealthy obsession. Izuna had spoiled him too much in that regard. No, silly. Something healthy that allows you to grow big and strong like Malara. You want it right? She asked earnestly, knowing that she always had to link her demands with his benefit, or he would protest. Crazy-ass kid. He sighed. All right. Then we will have our academic lessons, he smiled. What? Midnight. Sneaking out of town had always been a fun activity for him. Managing to outwit the guards, who always boasted that no one could enter or leave without their permission, made him laugh. The only drawback was that it worried Izuna, which is why she didn't do it more often. But his brother was gone, and Naruto was trying to revive. He enjoyed the growing affection that Madara showed him, and the return of his aunt had begun to fill the void in his heart. Naori was kind to him, but quite strict with her training. She was bold, and did not hesitate to make him uncomfortable with his body or his abhorrent love for books. He still shuddered as he remembered how he had spent the entire afternoon learning about the different ninja clans and their histories. Who led those clans, the names of their children, and which parts of the world they controlled. The information was too much for him, but Naori insisted that they learn it. When he argued that they had servants to remember that information, she hit him so hard that it still hurt. He had gotten online after that, and she rewarded his cooperation by taking him to eat ice cream with her. He was running through the vast forests, enjoying the cold air on his skin. The rustling of the leaves and the elusive running of the little animals made him laugh. This was the true meaning of freedom. Here in nature, I didn't have to pretend. He didn't have to mind his manners or choose every word carefully. He could say anything, do anything, and that brought him immense joy. Her father didn't care where she was, and it wouldn't matter if she came home in the morning. Madara slept soundly and always in his chambers, so there was no chance that his brother would find out that he had disappeared from his house. Naori was busy doing some work, and he doubted that she would feel the need to see him so late at night. Izuna had been the only one who cared and made sure she was in her bed most of the time. Naruto stopped his run by remembering his brother's last breath. "Be happy, little brother." Madara had warned her not to get too carried away with sadness, and being close to Naori helped. However, I also missed Izuna's smile, her raimens, and the long walks around the city. He missed the horse rides that his brother always offered him, despite the grimaces they made him when from the other members of the clan. She held back the tears and ran fast, not caring where she stepped. Only if I had been faster, only if I had been stronger. His brothers would still be alive. Why had he been so weak? "Break!" he cried out in pain when the branch of the tree that snapped under his feet, throwing him down the small hill. He tried to grab himself to stop the fall, and felt terror take over his heart as the deep valley got closer and closer. But there was nothing to hold on to, nothing to stop his descent into death, and his heart stopped when he felt the ground disappear beneath him. He closed his eyes, not wanting to see himself die in a horrible way. Everything was so dark and cold as I kept falling. He did not know what got hold of him, but he opened his eyes and saw that his life was passing before his eyes. All the good and bad moments, the memories of his brothers, his victories and defeats, tears and joys. Maybe I would see them again soon. However, all those thoughts vanished from his mind when in the darkness he saw something. It was distant, but getting bigger and bigger. Her eyes widened in horror when she saw something that stopped her heart. The pair of deep red eyes full of hate. He stared in shock at the deep red eyes that burned with such hatred and rage. At that moment, he knew that his death would be much more horrible and painful than he originally imagined. However, as his last moments passed, and he got closer and closer to the ascending form hidden in the dark shadows that bubbled with a monstrous amount of negativity, something inside him broke. "You are the dragon's blood." He remembered his father's words to his older brothers every time they faced something impossible. Those words always excited Inabi and Yashiro, and made both Izuna and Madara become bolder. But I had never understood the meaning behind those simple and silly words. However, when death crossed his path, it was those same simple and silly words that gave him strength. A dragon never gives up, a dragon never bows down to anyone, a dragon fights and fights until he defeats his enemies. He took 2 cribs and sharpies out of his bag and threw them towards the nearby rocky walls, not without first binding them to the ninja hunger. For once, he was grateful for Izuna's warnings to always be prepared, even if he only went out for a walk near his clan's borders. When connecting the weapons, he grabbed one end of the ropes, which prompted him to fly straight towards the nearby rock. When his feet touched the hard surface, he was ready and immediately channeled chakra that kept him firmly attached to the surface. He unleashed his tanto just in time when the creature below him growled angrily, which sent tremors through the valley. Dark? His eyes widened as a huge tail emerged from the shadows and pointed directly at him. Determined to survive, he raced across the rocky surface at speeds he never thought he could reach. Huge pieces of rock and debris flew over him as the tail tore apart the place where he was. His enemy was more cunning than he thought, because he kept throwing more and more gigantic tails to hit him. But he had always been faster than all his brothers. And despite his desire to see his dead brothers again, he now understood that Madara would feel heartbroken if he died. His older brother was not bad, although he had been distant all these years. Madara had shown him that she really cared about him, and now she wanted to meet her older and only brother alive, to support him. To protect him as Izuna had done, and for that one desire she would not give up. He would find a way to survive, no matter who or what he had to face. Returning to the top was not possible, because the creature was bent on stopping that possibility, so that left him only one option. When the ground came to his relief, he took a quick leap, narrowly avoiding being crushed to death by another tail. He immediately adopted his battle stance and activated his precious Dijutsu, staring at the huge creature. And what he saw left him stunned and terrified. And it seemed that he was not the only one to experience such feelings, as the now revealed beast shuddered. When his terrifying red eyes saw his enemy. Those eyes. His voice was even more serious and echoed through the empty valley like a war cry. Despite the growing fear in his heart, Naruto gripped his tanto firmly, staring at the huge nine-tailed fox in front of him, an Uchiha. If possible, the hatred and anger in the monster's eyes increased tenfold as he growled. "Are you going to attack me again?" the boy asked in a disconcertingly calm voice. The fox stopped for a moment, watching the little dwarf, and was surprised to see that the brat had not tried to run away. Or he was a fool like most kids. Especially those of his crazy clan, he was bolder than Kurama had imagined. "You're not afraid." It was just a statement from the fox, but it did not provoke any reaction in the stoic boy. When the monstrous animal glared at the insect in front of him, that's when the boy spoke. "I'm a shinobi. I won't kill you if you let me go, but if you persist, I will fight you," the boy replied fiercely. The beast laughed. "What makes you think an idiot like you can even give me a scratch? I can crush you in an instant, you brat," the fox sneered. "Maybe. But I will still fight with all my might." "Why?" the curious fox asked him. "Because I don't want to die." The beast laughed again at the pitiful response expected of every human, but the boy's look puzzled him. For he neither burst out in anger nor frowned. She stared at him with the same determination. That woke him up. Most of them would have pissed on themselves, defended themselves, or simply tried to run away. This little guy hadn't done any of that. "You will die. Either by my hands or by the hands of some other shinobi asshole. Children like you don't survive long in this world, and yet you struggle. Why is that?" the fox asked curiously, momentarily restraining his urge to crush the boy, just to find the answer. It had been a long time since another mindless human had crossed his path or tried to attack him. "My brother would be sad if I died. And I don't want her to be sad again." "Never again," the boy replied calmly. The fox was silent, watching the boy with a look that little Uchiha could not understand. Just when he thought the beast was about to attack again, he spoke up. "You're already cursed enough to have been born in that one. That mind cult you call a clan, what's worse, you inherited these miserable eyes when I thought I'd never see this power again in my life. Do you think they will make you powerful? These eyes have only brought misery and pain to their wearer. It would be a pity if I killed you here," the fox said frankly. The boy didn't say a word, and just pointed his tanto forward, which made the beast scoff. "Go away. I spare your life," sneered the fox. Naruto blinked in surprise, knowing that he had probably been given a unique opportunity. Something that this beast would not have given to anyone else. However, he didn't want to turn his back on the fox, only to have it attack him from behind. The creature must have recognized the look that made her snarl. "I will show you no mercy, stupid. Anyone who has used the Sharingan has never had a good fate. Everyone dies screaming in pain. The day will come when you will wish I had killed you here," the fox warned. "We'll see about that," Naruto replied sharply. Heh, what guts you have. Awesome for a fucking brat, said the funny fox. I will not tell anyone about this meeting, or about the fact that you live here so close to our borders. You have my word, Naruto said honestly, putting his gun back in its holster. When he looked at the fox, if possible, he seemed even more disappointed than before. Not only do you belong to a crazy clan, but you are even dumber with that sense of loyalty and honor you have towards your clan. Does that make you feel better? Snarled the fox, receiving an icy look from the boy. Maybe my family is crazy, and so am I. But without my loyalty and honor, what difference is there between you and me? I will fight, I will die for my family, no matter how bad you say they are. What are you fighting for? Naruto asked harshly. The air around him became dense with hatred and rage as the fox stared at the ground, whistling fiercely. Go away, before he decides to kill you. Naruto didn't need any more warnings as he jumped to the surface of the rock and instantly started running towards the surface at high speed. And while he was still running away, he missed the fox who was staring at him, while he disappeared with a frown. Silly boy. He did not stop running, even when he came out of the dark valley. His legs refused to stop as he sped through the trees. His heart was shooting out of his chest, and he was sweating profusely. Profusely as he recalled what he had found moments before. The most important thing is that he had survived, thanks to a really amazing luck, because there was no way he could have defeated that monster. Neither Madara, any other Uchiha, nor even his own father could defeat that beast. He had felt that infinite sea of vile chakra in that beast, he had felt its hatred, its anger, its desire to kill. Not even the entire Uchiha clan combined could defeat that monster. That was the reason why he had promised not to tell anyone the location of the fox, so that no idiot would go out and try to enslave the monster, only to end up murdered. If things had been different, he would have been forced to fight the fox. And he would have died, of that there was no doubt. But strangely, the beast had spared his life and his words. What did he mean by the Uchihas being crazy? Sure, his family was too stuffy and arrogant, but they couldn't be crazy. He refused to believe it, no matter what that stupid fox said. The Sharingan brings only pain and misery. All I had heard about Kodachiya was how great this power was, or how lucky Naruto was to wake him up. But if he could exchange these eyes for his dead brothers, Naruto would do it without hesitation. Because the pain of losing them tormented him every moment, regardless of the power that these eyes gave him. It wasn't worth it. And when he realized that fact, he knew that there was some bitter truth in the fox's words. And there were a lot of things Naruto didn't know about his Dojutsu, his clan, or even what kind of dangerous monsters lurked in the real and dangerous world. For all these years, she had lived a sheltered life under Izuna's watch, but now that veil was falling very fast. He had already seen the barbarism and murder that humans were capable of inflicting on each other. The pain of losing your loved ones before your very eyes. The power of hatred that could drive even the noblest or weakest man to momentary madness. The endless desire of men for more and more power and greater ambition. Finally, he stopped when he reached the clan settlement and the secret passage he had created for himself over the years. His head was spinning with all those overwhelming thoughts, but if something was for sure, it was that the Uchiha clan was his family. The strange but affectionate Madara was his brother, the attractive but strict Naori his aunt, and the ambitious and cold Tajima his father. Walking towards a nearby tree, the boy knelt down and placed the edge of his tanto on the grass, his eyes burning intensely with determination. Izuna, Yashiro, and Nabi. He wished to see even a ghostly reflection of his lost brothers, but all he saw was the empty bark of the tree in front of him. I will protect you all, no matter what. Taking a deep breath, he uttered the word on which he would live his life. I promise. The next morning, Naruto was quite surprised when he received the summons, and had to prepare hurriedly so as not to arrive so. For that man never tolerated any weakness or lethargy. That's why Naruto found himself wearing his best clan clothes and his newly forged armor. He was fully armed to be ready for the daily training he would definitely have with Naori afterwards. No matter what Anuchi's reason was for training. On a daily basis. When he met the man near the holy temple, the air around him turned frosty as both of them looked at each other. And then Tajima did something Naruto never saw him do, at least with him. He smiled. But it was not a sign of joy or pride, but of an even greater ambition and plans. The ones that were hiding in the man's eyes. Naori tells me that you have potential, Tajima said frankly, getting straight to the point bluntly. Well, she's not blind, unlike few people I know, Naruto replied coolly, earning a raised eyebrow from his father. Did you hate me, boy? Naruto decided not to answer and settled for giving him a fierce look that made Tajima look at his clan's settlement, located under the mountain on which the temple was located. You've always been funny, strange, and innocent. Believe it or not, I don't hate you. But I don't love you either. The barely 6-year-old boy had known this all his life, but to hear it in words was as if a sword had brutally pierced his heart. And it hurt, but he didn't blink, he didn't cry, he didn't stare. He just stared. Why is that? He asked simply, without any accusation or expectation. Tajima's fists clenched, and for a moment, Naruto saw the strange pain in those hard eyes. Something the man never did even when his children died. You took away the one thing I've always wanted. You stole it from me, and nothing will be able to fill the void it left. The sheer amount of anger and pain present in Tajima's eyes was enough to make her youngest son realize why things had turned out this way between them. Mother, Naruto said sadly. Do you look so much like her that every day it hurts to see you standing in front of me while she is still dead? They warned Ikari about problems with her pregnancy. I told her to have an abortion to protect her. But he chose to give you his life, giving up his. I loved her more than anything in this world, even my children. But why do you think he chose to die? Tajima asked harshly. Naruto had a hard time holding back the tears when he found out that his mother died for him. It hurt more than the contempt and ignorance of his family during all these years, because it justified the hatred that his brothers had shown him and the distance that his father maintained with him. Because he killed the one thing everyone loved. I don't know, he replied sadly. It's the surname that endures, it's the only thing that matters. Not you, not your honor, not your beliefs. We all serve the clan, and those above us. I want you to stop acting like a fool and become the man you are meant to be. Not tomorrow or the day after, now, Tajima said earnestly, looking his son straight in the eyes. If I do that, will things change between us? Naruto asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Never. Naruto lowered his gaze to the ground, but stopped when a hand landed on his shoulder, making him look back at his father. But I can be proud of you. He saw nothing but pure honesty reflected in those dark black eyes. This man would never love him, and yet you are my son. You always have been, no matter what we both feel. I will do my duty to you, but I hope that you will also do yours. To govern, he sometimes has to do unpleasant things to his enemies and allies, but that also generates anger for him. I can rule well because Naori does things that I couldn't do. She keeps our clan running from the shadows. You are the youngest son, and as such, it will be your duty to support Madara, who will succeed me. In the same way that Naori supports me now. That's your job, do it with all your might, and you will make me and this clan proud. Do you understand, Naruto? Tajima asked seriously. Naruto nodded, looking directly at his father. I will never love you, father. But Madara is my brother, the only brother I have left. And there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do for him, Naruto promised fiercely, earning a cold smile from the older man. You're an Uchiha, all right. But you'll give me what I want. No questions asked, Naruto demanded. If it is in my power to give you, and if you do your duty well, then you will get everything you want. I promise you, Tajima said honestly. After one last nod, Tajima watched as her son walked away proudly and upright. But she never saw the silent tears falling from the young man's eyes. The days flew by like the wind, the weeks passed in the blink of an eye, turning into long months. Meanwhile, Naori watched as the boy she adored changed before her very eyes, where innocence and joy once shone. They were now replaced by a permanent, hard and gloomy look. He used to complain about reading and writing, but now he did what she asked without hesitation. He did what he was told without blinking. He did one thing, and one thing only. He learned. I've never seen a Uchiha put so much passion into their training. He practiced day and night until he collapsed from exhaustion. It was as if something possessed him and drove him to keep going. Within 6 months, the once weakling was now rising as one of the best water and lightning-style ninjutsu fighters. His genjutsu had become even more dangerous with his Sharingan, and although his taijutsu was mediocre, unlike Madara, who was a monster in that arena, Naruto was the best swordsman Naori had seen in the entire new generation of Uchiha. He was quick as the wind and flexible as a snake, and when he attacked, he cut his enemies in half, without hesitation, without fear, without mercy. He laughed, joked, smiled, but the light in his eyes had faded. And that broke his heart, because Naruto had been the only one who had shown him a new possibility that the Uchiha could take advantage of. She was different, but someone had irreversibly shattered her spirit. She had tried to talk to him, had urged him to open up, but he always made silly excuses or said everything was fine. But it was not so. He had confronted Tajima because his brother might be the only one capable of reducing Naruto to that state. But he only got as a response the denial of any involvement of Tajima in the matter. Naori knew it was a lie, but she had no proof, and her brother was difficult enough. However, things were not so dark in spite of everything. From time to time, he glimpsed the real Naruto, the kind and gentle boy who surrounded Madara. She was glad to see that they were getting along better than ever. Despite his busy schedule as heir to the clan, Madara did his best to spend time with his brother. She corrected his mistakes and always encouraged him, something Naori was never able to do, much to his disappointment. And that was the only thing that gave him hope. She watched the boy sitting next to her as they both watched the sun set in the sky. "Are you afraid? Tomorrow is a big day for you," she said sweetly. "I am ready," he said, holding his new sword firmly in his right hand. He stiffened up as a pair of soft but strong arms wrapped around his chest firm behind, followed by a deeply pleasant scent that invaded his senses as Naori placed her face next to his cheek. Naori. He still felt strange calling his aunt by her name, knowing that it was neither appropriate nor respectful. But she had insisted to the point of hitting him on the head every time he didn't. "Are you okay?" she asked, worried. "I'm fine." He grimaced when she pinched his cheek quite hard, which made him stare at her, but softened when he saw the look in her eyes. "What am I to you, Naori?" he asked, his gaze fixed anywhere but on her eyes, fearful of her answer. "You are my nephew, my student, my friend." "Why are you asking me that?" he asked with a frown. "Please don't lie to me. Just tell me what you really want from me. You didn't spend all these months training me for nothing. I'm the youngest son, a spare. Someone important like you never bothered. She would be with someone like me unless she wants something," she said sincerely. The slap that hit his cheek sent tremors all over his body, and when he looked at her, Naruto couldn't help but shudder as he saw the raw fury and pain in her eyes. "How dare you say that?" he hissed furiously. "Nothing is free. In this world, Naori, everyone always wants something, whether it's my father, the clan or you. No one cared about me for all these years, but now that I have the Sharingan, and 3 of my brothers have died, suddenly everyone starts taking an interest in me. They just want my power and what I can do for them, maybe except for Madara. So please tell me what you want," she asked, unable to hide her sadness. She looked at this child with wide eyes, unable to hide her surprise and pain at hearing him say such cruel things. What hurt him even more was that almost everything was true. "Naruto, you are my family. I don't need anything from you," she whispered, and shuddered when he glared at her. "You abandoned me." The vague memory of a 3-year-old boy with tears in his eyes haunted her. Even after all these years, I had never forgotten the pain in those young eyes, nor the image of that child crying her eyes out in Izuna's arms as she walked away from their lives to fulfill her duty to her clan. It had been the right thing to do, the work necessary to keep Lucci still on the power play. But he never thought about the damage it would cause to that boy. She thought he was young and would forget her, but he never did. "The only thing I had in this world was you and Suzuna. Then you just walked away, without looking back. You never loved me, did you? But it's okay, I killed my own mother and my brother, so it's okay." "But why does it still hurt?" she asked painfully, squeezing her heart with her small hands. "What?" Naori looked at him in horror, and her eyes filled with tears as she let go of her hug and looked at the lake, with the melancholy always present in her eyes. The next moment, a shadow fell next to the young man, startling them both, and before they could blink, a strong blow connected with Naruto's head, making him shudder as he stared at the hard gaze of his big brother. "You've got me, you little fool," Madara said fiercely, but frowned when Naruto laughed cynically. "How far would you go for me? Izuna always fought for me, no matter who against." "You can't do that," Naruto replied harshly. "And if I do?" Madara asked sternly. All joy had disappeared from her eyes. "Even against our father. Even against our clan. Against the whole world." Naruto's eyes widened in pairs. Even when Madara didn't blink or flinch for a second. His older brother just stared him straight in the eyes. "I will burn the whole world if it makes you happy and keeps you safe," Madara promised. "Why is that?" Naruto asked sadly, with tears in his young eyes. Strong arms wrapped around his smaller body, drawing him into what was the fiercest embrace of his life. He felt like he was being crushed, but strangely, that only served to ease his pain, as Madara whispered in his ear. "Because I can't do this without you. You are my youngest brother, my last brother. If I lose you too, I'll have nothing left to fight for. And no matter what happens, little brother, I will protect you. From our enemies, from our own clan, and even from my father. Anyone who threatens you will have to go through me first, and I will kill them all." Naruto looked at those Sharingan eyes in shock, while Madara looked at him with such affection that it warmed his own cold heart. "Do you promise?" he asked hesitantly. "Do you want me to swear an oath with my little finger?" Madara asked with a mocking smile. Naruto burst out laughing, just imagining Madara doing something like that. However, Madara gave him another blow to the head and interrupted him. "But if you keep depressed like this, I will kill you myself," Madara warned. "Hi, you little prick." Madara's eyebrows twitched violently, and he cursed loudly when Naruto shot out of his arms to the other side of the lake. With a mischievous smile on his face, Naori blushed furiously when Madara brazenly took off his pants and ran after Naruto, shouting a series of curses. As he sprayed his special water right behind his now terrified brother, who also. He started shouting a series of unique curses while trying his best not to get soaked in the shower that Madara threatened to unleash on him. All the while, Madara continued to laugh maniacally. He couldn't help but notice the fact that Tajima had destroyed his own family, but fate hadn't been totally cruel, as he saw hope not only for Naruto, but for his entire clan. In these two guys, together they could do anything in this world. And maybe it was time for her to make amends for her own past mistakes and appreciate the only thing that really mattered in this world: the family. He was lucky to still have one in this cursed world of endless war. But those compensations would have to wait, as she settled for watching her funny nephews argue with each other. However, he had not overlooked the persistent darkness in both. Even more so, in Madara's case, if the promise she had just made was any indication. That boy was much more powerful than any of his generation, or the several that preceded him. Someday, he might be powerful enough to defeat the Enju. But in those powerful eyes, he had also seen a great weakness. Madara loved too much, and really cared about his younger and last brother. Naori could only pray that these two boys would not lose each other, because the madness that would follow such a calamity would destroy both the Uchiha and the world. The next day, the fateful day had arrived. Probably the most important in the life of every Uchiha that has ever existed, because today, it would be decided if they were part of the group or if they were liabilities that should be put aside. It was the day of Naruto's trial. The young man was standing near the lake, fully armed and ready, with a determined look. Almost the entire clan had gathered to witness his rite of passage. For he was not only a possible future leader of the Shimodara Otehime clan. They were dying, but he also owned the famous Sharingan. And for many who had not witnessed that sacred power in battle before, this was a golden opportunity. The conflict had reduced considerably after their crucial victory over the Senju 6 months ago. And both major clans took a step back, which resulted in a strange momentary peace. Madara kept going out on small missions, but only with a small squad, leaving the rest of the clan to starve to see the Sharingan in battle. And now his wish would be fulfilled, but Naori knew that he had only increased Naruto's problems. While he would have to face a younger, established and recognized member of his clan, mostly of similar age in combat, to defeat him, or at least show a dignified enough fight to be considered strong. That would make Naruto a real Uchiha and an adult, despite being only 6 years old. It was an overwhelming task for any child, but Naruto stood his ground because Madara was watching him fiercely. The presence of his older brother had silenced the whispers and the bids that the crowd used to throw at the wrestlers. But everyone's eyes were opened when a fully armed Tajima was the one who started walking towards Naruto. "Father, what does this mean?" Madara asked angrily. "I will be his opponent," Tajima declared, eliciting gasps from her clan members as they began to mutter angrily through the crowd. "That's unfair and against the rules, father. He chooses someone his own age, as required by law," Madara argued, enraged by the injustice he was about to inflict on his younger brother. Tajima glared at him. "I make the rules, boy. And you will obey me." Tajima and the entire clan shuddered when in the blink of an eye there was a sword placed on the clan chief's neck. By none other than Madara himself, who had pure murder shining in his eyes. "I've been watching you inflict injustices on him for a long time." "Not anymore," Madara promised, "you idiot. Can't you see I'm doing this for you? I'll put on a good show to make sure he gets through, but I'll also show that he's not as strong as you. The clan cannot be divided between two brothers. Only you will lead the clan, not he," if he or Tajima in anger. "Naruto will never betray me, nor has he ever wished for power," Madara said confidently, looking directly into her father's cold eyes. "Silly boy. Maybe your brother doesn't want that, but if he shows his strength today, his followers will grow day by day. There are already many in the clan who admire him, and one day they will pressure Naruto to overthrow you, if only to satisfy their own goals. That kind of rivalry will destroy the clan, and I will not allow it. I know the power play better than you, so adjust." "This is my last warning," Tajima said coldly, ready to spank the boy if he persisted. But Madara did not give up, and her Sharingan was activated. Naori was already moving towards her brother and nephew to stop the conflict, while the crowd was becoming more and more fascinated by the spectacle. "And I will fight with him." To everyone's surprise and Madara's horror, it was Naruto who said that by unleashing his sword and pointing it at his father. "Naruto? This is my fight, Nisan. Believe in me?" he asked, looking gratefully at his perplexed older brother. To Tajima's surprise, Madara lowered his sword, but did not walk away without warning. "If you do injustice to him, then consider that my support for you has disappeared." Tajima was about to discipline the insolent boy, but Naori's pleading gaze and the stares of the entire clan stopped him. Naruto was already corrupting the obedient and loyal Madara, and he couldn't allow it. With fury burning in his eyes, Tajima walked towards the battle arena as he and his son took up positions on the other side of the lake. "Try not to dishonor our family," Tajima warned, and became even more irritated when Naruto smiled. "The same could be said for you, man. This impudent brat." Without warning, Tajima attacked. Katen. Gakakyu no Jutsu, release of fire. Great fireball technique. A huge and furious fireball was unleashed by Patriarch Uchiha, sending it directly to his young son, burning water on his way and causing steam to rise. Madara held her breath when Naruto simply put his sword forward, making it glow with chakra. The older brother saw Naori smiling with pride. The next moment, Naruto disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Shunsin. Madara's eyes widened when through her Sharingan, she saw Naruto literally cut the fireball in half with his sword and disappear from flaming Laura, with such speed that it left Tajima speechless. And it wasn't over. With the Sharingan on, the boy wove a hint with his hands. Embedded set of hand seals at lightning speed. Sushin. His Iryuden no Jutsu. Release of water. Water dragon bullet technique. Two large roaring water dragons with hateful yellow eyes emerged from the lake and charged directly towards Tajima, much to the surprise's great concern. Head of the clan. But the experience came when at the last moment Tajima made a seal with his hand, replacing himself with a nearby log that was available near the shore just in time when the water dragons broke through his position. Naruto turned back and brought his sword forward to crash into his father's steel as the man appeared behind him with a quick shunsin. And Tajima made her first mistake. For a brief second, he looked with hatred directly into Naruto's eyes, which were now burning with an active Sharingan. The viewers of the clan gasped when Tajima froze when Naruto developed him, and then quickly beheaded him so that he turned into smoke. Shadow clone. Even without Sharingan, The Uchiha maintained their world domination thanks to their skill in the ninja arts. One of their greatest virtues was their great dexterity with ninjutsu, which allowed them to develop numerous powerful techniques. The Shadow Clone was one of them. Only a few members of his clan could perform this forbidden jutsu, and even they could do it with some limitation. But Naruto's family had always trained the strongest warriors of his clan. That's why they were the leaders and the others followed them. And even though Tajima didn't have the Sharingan, that didn't diminish the fact that he was a powerful and dangerous shinobi. Naruto turned around and saw the real Tajima waiting for him with a proud smile on his face. The son got ready while his father raised two fingers, making four Mizugen-sen emerge from the lake. All armed and with the same bloodthirsty smile, with the intention of putting their enemy in his place. And then the clones attacked. Naruto fought back. Madara barely gnashed his teeth at seeing his father use so much power against Naruto, but surprisingly the young man held on. Quite well, in fact, if the admiring and proud glances of his clansmates proved it. Still, that didn't make the older brother any less worried. However, he blinked in surprise when Naruto unleashed sparks from his left hand as he approached the water clones, making them scream. In a second, Madara watched with his active Sharingan as his brother's sword pierced through the paralyzed clones like butter, causing them to die. And then the boy jumped high into the air with a fierce battle cry that descended on the real Tajima. The brutal kick he received in the stomach took the boy's breath away, while Tajima smiled smugly. But the gesture soon faded away as the Naruto he had just kicked dissolved into water. Mizuben-sen. Copy my jutsu, but no hand stamps, and when? And most importantly, where is he? Tajima thought quickly. He gasped when something sharp went through the back of his legs as the real Naruto emerged from the lake with his sword. Now with his father's vitality. Tajima turned angrily, ready to hit the insolent boy, but he easily evaded the attack. Damn your Sharingan. Although he was glad that his clan had regained the prestigious power, it didn't change the fact that at that moment Tajima felt a slight disadvantage towards himself as his son continued to evade their attacks. He's not trying to tire me out or waiting for an opportunity. When he has it, he will attack with his impeccable speed. How clever, but it's over. Tajima thought seriously. He was already blurring the hand seals of one of his most dangerous movements when a shadow appeared between them. Naori firmly grabbed Tajima's hand and stopped Naruto's sword from attacking further with the help of a kunai. Enough, he ordered coolly. The fight is not over, Tajima said coldly, only to receive an equally cold stare from her young sister. It's over, he ordered. Are you challenging me? Tajima asked in a state of shock. I will not allow you to kill a child to satisfy your ego, Tajima. More importantly, he is my nephew, and I will not allow you to do him injustice, Naori warned. As Naruto's eyes widened at seeing her face her father like this. And it was for him. The next moment, Madara jumped up as well, and although he hadn't raised his sword as before, he seemed ready enough to make a move. If his father persisted. He proved it, father. Much better than most of the Uchiha, it's done, Madara said earnestly. Tajima looked at them furiously, and then looked back at Naruto, who was watching him calmly. The boy still seemed ready to fight, but he was holding back, waiting for the decision of the adults. Then the clan chief also saw the crowd, and in their eyes he saw pure admiration and pride for Naruto. Everyone was tense, waiting for the next move, which finally made Tajima sigh. He put his sword back in the scabbard behind his back and watched Naruto do the same. Father and son walked towards each other, while Naori and Madara stayed close in case the situation got out of control again. Kneel down. The boy obeyed and respectfully knelt down while Tajima took off his sword again and tapped the boy's shoulder twice. Naruto, from the Uchiha clan, you have successfully passed the passing rhythm. And I hereby welcome you as a full-fledged adult member of our prestigious and noble clan. Make us all proud, Tajima ordered. Naruto slammed his clenched fist on his armored chest and looked at his father with determination and pride burning in his eyes. I will, father. Despite everything that happened, Naruto still felt defeated when Tajima just walked away without saying another word. While for his other children he always had some nice words when they completed the same test. But his disappointment was soon overshadowed by joy when Naori and Madara came over to congratulate him. And when Madara lifted him up on his shoulders cheering him on, Naruto watched with a smile as his enthusiastic clan returned the applause. It was a good day. When the pair of eyes opened again, they widened in shock and disbelief, while in the darkness of the valley, he saw a figure waiting for him. "Are you crazy?" the giant fox asked him in disbelief. Naruto smiled at the comment as he showed his official Uchiha clan t-shirt to the giant fox. "Well, I'm an adult now, so according to you, I'm one of the male cult now," Naruto said cheekily. "Why are you here, boy?" the fox asked him with a strange sadness evident in his voice. To his utter disgust, Naruto simply ignored him and left some scrolls on the floor. With a single stamp, he opened them all and, to the fox's surprise, a huge variety of food appeared. "I'm celebrating. I was close, so I thought you might be hungry. What the hell are you looking at?" "I'm not going to finish all this by myself," Naruto said with a smile, pointing at the hunted deer, the ramen, 5 kinds of fish, rice, and many other dishes along with the meat. "Why are you here?" the fox asked him again, making the boy frown. "I had a hard time stealing this food from the kitchens, and I hunted this damn deer myself. Quick little thing, why are you here?" To the fox's surprise, the boy advanced until they were both 2 centimeters apart. Naruto looked directly into those demonic eyes, this time without fear or hesitation. "We're not all crazy." The fox had barely gotten over his surprise at those words and the boy's actions when the boy reached his small hand forward. With a bright smile on his face, Naruto Uchiha, son of Tajima, brother of Madara, and second heir of the main family, the fox stared without blinking, until he suddenly received a strong blow to the head that made his eyes open comically. "It's rude not to say your name when someone introduces themselves," Naruto said with a pout. "I will kill you," promised the angry fox, but again he was speechless at the clarity and conviction that came to the boy's jovial eyes. "You would have done it when we first met. Someone as powerful as you doesn't hide here in this stupid valley so close to the Uchiha clan border for no reason. Am I right?" Naruto asked seriously. The fox stiffened, making the boy smile. "It took me 6 months to discover it and read a lot more books, until I finally discovered the truth. You're a Biju, aren't you? A great being of chakra and power. The books called you Kyuubi and said that your species disappeared thousands of years ago, when the first war broke out. Is that correct?" Naruto asked curiously. "You talk too much," said the irritated fox. "What's your name?" the stubborn boy asked, making the fox roll his eyes. "They already call me Kyuubi. It doesn't matter what stupid humans call me. It matters to me." For an instant, the fox's gaze softened at hearing those words and the sincerity visible in the boy's eyes. Maybe the old man had made a mistake, maybe this time things could change. "You're annoying," the Kirugi muttered, causing the boy to roll his eyes. "Wow, thanks. Giant and stupid fox," Naruto replied with a smile. "I will kill you," the beast growled. "Please, do it. I'll eat you." "Why is that? I brought you so much delicious food." "You're bad," Naruto said with fake tears rolling down his cheeks. Naruto chuckled as the fox roared madly out of frustration before slamming its gigantic head to the ground, creating a small tremor throughout the valley. "Kurama." "Huh?" the confused boy asked. The fox barely spoke in whispers. "My name is Kurama," the irritated fox said, earning a bright smile from the boy. "A nice name." "It's a pleasure to meet you," Naruto said cheerfully, and shook his small hand tightly with one of the beast's huge paws. When he looked up, he saw Kurama looking at him with a strange look present in his demonic eyes. "Aren't you afraid of me, child?" the fox asked seriously. "It was before. But for the last 6 months I've been watching you from afar. You don't interact with anyone or go out hunting. You just stay here, in this dark valley, sleeping. At first I thought you were a slacker, then I thought maybe you were protecting my clan. But none of our books mention someone like you as an ally. And then I remembered that you said that my clan has the madness passed down from generation to generation. And then I finally realized." Kurama gasped at this young boy's deduction, which he demonstrated by looking the fox straight in the eyes. With an complicit look. "You're watching my clan, waiting for something to happen. I don't know what it is, but I guess it's not pretty or good for my people, Naruto said coldly. You're smart. I never thought those damn brothers would manage to create a smart one again, the beast sneered, making Naruto frown. Those days are behind us. Inbreeding has been reduced in our clan, and, unlike our ancestors, we no longer kill each other. Killing a relative is the worst crime a Uchiha can commit, and it is punishable by death. Maybe my clan was bad before, but we can change. We're not all crazy psychopaths, Naruto argued fiercely. Is that what you're here for? To set an example? Kurama asked with a mocking smile. Yes, the fox laughed, but this time it didn't have a mocking tone, but the beast sounded funny. It won't work, boy. My oath is absolute, and I will keep it even if that dark day comes. Even you can't stop me from doing my duty, Kurama warned, but still the boy did not give up. Well, then it's my duty to make you see my people differently. I'll make you change your mind, Naruto promised confidently. What a statement. I'm not sure you can fulfill it, the Biju challenged. We won't know unless you try with these words. The boy brought the deer closer and placed it in front of the fox. You are a strange child, the fox muttered in an annoyed voice, and although he had no need to eat or drink, he grabbed the deer with his big jaw, if only to please the smiling child in front of him. Get used to it? We're friends now. A few days later, Madara and his squad crossed the borders. At full speed, with the anxiety and fear evident in his eyes. They had left a few days ago to destroy some Sarutobi, who were trying to storm one of the villages protected by the Uchiha. While all the monkeys had been killed, Madara received a distress call directly from his village. That had happened an hour ago, and he hadn't wasted a second to get back, and his group was tired. But they still ran as fast as they could. Fear for the safety of their families burned in their terrified hearts. Had the Senju attacked with all their might? Or was some other group about to attack your borders? Madara burst through the doors without even looking at the guards, his Sharingan eyes fixed on the monstrous fire, burning in the place where the sacred Uchiha temple once stood. He climbed to the rooftops, jumping between the houses without even looking back, to see if his followers were behind him or not. After several long minutes, he arrived at the place, and what he saw left his heart paralyzed. Around him were dozens and dozens of his clan members, many trying to put out the fire with water jutsu, while others remained motionless from horror. Because there, in front of them, there were almost a dozen corpses. All the Uchihas, men, women, and even small children, were slaughtered like animals. His horrified, wide eyes stared out into the dark night. The sacred grounds of his temple are now ruined with the remains of his own family, who soiled the once green grass with red. And in the middle of the massacre was the person who was being looked at with hatred by the entire clan. The 6-year-old boy was sitting on a wooden chair with his stained sword in his hands. His Uchiha attire was stained with the blood and dirt surrounding him. Madara stopped breathing when a pair of familiar eyes looked at them all. But where there was once joy and innocence, there is now a fully activated Sharingan with 3 bright tomes. And when those same haunting and terrifying eyes so full of darkness looked at him, Madara could only say one word. Naruto? Madara couldn't move or breathe as he watched his younger brother sitting in the middle of the massacre with the stained sword in his hands. Time seemed to have stopped for the older brother, as neither the sight of the corpses of his clan members, nor the chaos that reigned around him disturbed him. The only thing he cared about and could focus on was his brother's gaze. This was not the same brother so full of joy and innocence. One much more honorable and kind than most of the Uchiha of this generation. No, the person sitting in that chair was someone else. Because in those eyes were hidden an indescribable horror and an immeasurable pain. It might be difficult to discern him behind the dark look the young man wore, but Madara knew him better than everyone present. He knew that his brother was stronger than all of them, both in strength and in character, despite all the evidence he said. Otherwise, almost a dozen fully armed Uchiha guards marched towards the lonely boy. But they all stopped when the blood-stained Naruto Uchiha got up from the chair. "Stop before I kill you all," Naruto warned, not a single shred of emotion in his voice. Each and every one of the Uchiha mocked him with endless hatred burning in their eyes. Killer of relatives. Traitor. Jewbreaker. You're a monster. A man without loyalty or honor. Madara watched his father impassively as the members of his clan berated his own son. Tajima didn't feel a great affection for Naruto, but this was going too far. Being his father, why didn't he defend his own son? He looked at his brother again and saw the same impassive look of his father burning in his eyes as everyone, men and women, cursed him. But no one had the courage to stop the stained boy, who was holding his stained sword. However, they should have taken Naruto's silence as cowardice when two older men, almost a decade older than his younger brother, charged forward. When they barely managed to draw their swords, they only saw a blurred image and screamed the next instant, as blood gushed from their severed legs. The two Uchiha screamed in pain, losing control of their weapons and falling to their knees, as their hands desperately tried to stop the large cut on their legs. However, Naruto's defensive action only seemed to further anger the crowd. Madara was too surprised or horrified to see his brother take out a kunai and throw it a few meters away from him, marking a boundary that no one overlooked. The message was clear. Cross the line, and you will reach your end. The sight of the two older Uchiha still injured, screaming in agony, along with the sight of all the Uchiha that the boy had slaughtered previously, made everyone shudder. The kid's baffling look only seemed to make him look scarier. The air was heavy with murderous intentions, the smell of rotting flesh and doom. Madara felt as if her worst nightmares had come true. If losing three brothers in a battle was devastating, seeing what was happening before their eyes was heartbreaking. The worst thing was that I didn't know what to do. Fortunately, for him and his furious clan, someone did enough. Tajima Yuchi's voice was still as calm as ever, despite the dire situation. His gaze, cold as ice, rested on his youngest son, who was watching him with a lost gaze. I order you to surrender now, Kingslayer. Madara didn't look at his father, nor at the angry crowd protesting the order, and instead demanded that Naruto be killed right there and then. All that big brother Uchiha really saw was the slight trembling of Naruto's lips when his father called him by that insulting name. The boy raised his sword in the air, causing almost all of the Uchiha to take a step back in fear, but they were relieved, when instead he stuck the sword into the ground with a loud noise. The next second, several guards appeared around Naruto and grabbed him roughly before starting to drag him gracelessly, while doing their best to prevent the murderous mob from killing the child right there, but there was nothing they could do to stop them from shouting a word at the top of their lungs. Killer of relatives. Madara walked towards his father, and despite the most threatening look of his life present in his eyes, Tajima calmly looked at him. What happened? Madara hissed. Your brother went crazy and killed these people. Now I have to fix this mess by doing justice, Tajima said with some irritation, as if he cared in the slightest about Naruto's fate or what this means for the boy's future. But of course, she had never worried about her youngest son. Bullshit. You know he would never do something like that, Madara protested. Your love for him blinds you to his flaws or his crimes, Madara. Think about the clan, Tajima warned coldly. Fuck the clan. Tajima's eyes widened, surprised to hear the ever-loyal and obedient Madara utter those dangerous words. Although they were uttered in a whisper, leaving those present without anyone noticing, the murderous look in Madara's eyes was proof enough that she was serious. He's my brother. I don't care who he is or what he has done. I know him better than you, and nothing will make me believe that Naruto did this, or even if he did, it was not without reason. And if you do any harm to him, so what, boy? The darkness and hatred in Madara's eyes made Tajima shudder and take a step back. I'm going to kill you. With those words, Tajima's eldest son fled towards the dungeons where Naruto was being transported. But her words would resonate in her father's mind for a long time, and Madara's gaze tormented him. I would comment every night. It was dark, darker than most places Madara had ever seen in her life. And only the flickering lights of the torches hung on the adjacent walls indicated the way. He saw a detachment of heavily armed guards standing in front of one of the cells. As he approached, the five placed their hands on the hilts of their swords. No one can visit the Kingslayer without Tajima-sama's permission, Yamato Uchiha warned. The man's voice as unpleasant as the scar on his face. "He's my brother," Madara hissed. His eyes flashed a red that made everyone except Yamato take a step back. Because everyone knew, even before the Sharingan woke up, that Madara was stronger than everyone. But Yamato glared away the action with an even more stern look. "He killed my cousin." For the first time, Madara felt his aggressiveness decrease, because this man in front of him had indeed lost his family that night. This made Tajima's eldest son disconnect and look at the guards warily. "I need to know what happened. He is my brother, and although I have always been loyal to our clan, I will not hesitate to harm you if you get in my way," he warned. "Madara?" Yamato stared at the boy for a long moment before shaking his head in disgust. "Tajima-sama will know about this, Madara. But go and see the king's lair, as he will probably be executed tomorrow morning," Yamato said viciously. Earning the assent of the other guards, Madara smiled. And that sent shivers through the hearts of each and every guard. "You are free to try." They got out of his way and opened the wooden door, protected by seals that never allowed any prisoner to escape. Madara still felt the burning stares raining down on him and turned with a glance. Obvious killer. When he unleashed a quarter of his murderous intent, he smiled as he saw them all fall to their knees. "I will massacre all their families and those who try to harm my brother. Don't forget your place. They can protest up to this point because my family allows it. I love our clan, and I will protect it until my last breath, but I will not hesitate to murder all of you if you or anyone else dares to even lift a finger against my family. Do you understand that?" He was satisfied when 3 of the guards urinated on themselves, and the remaining 2 trembled with terror, including Yamato. And although Madara didn't like to treat her clansmates like this, her father had always engraved only one truth in her head. "We are the blood of the dragon, and dragons only respect strength. Show weakness, even for a single second, and you will be damned forever." Madara's family had maintained leadership for centuries in their clan, greedy for power, just by being the strongest. And while they had done their best to make the clan prosper, their ancestors had also protected their own families from enemies and allies alike, no matter the price. And that was precisely what I intended to do. When he entered the cell, it was even darker than the corridor, so he was forced to take a torch from outside and close the door in the faces of the still terrified guards. A pair of red eyes stared at him from the now fading darkness. Madara couldn't help but hastily walk forward and wrap her brother in a fierce hug, not caring about the fact that the young man was soaked in blood. "Madara?" "I'm here, little brother," Madara assured. "You should go." He broke the hug and stared at those eyes with a fully developed Sharingan. If someone had told her that Naruto would one day become the first to achieve this full power in centuries, Madara would have scoffed. But his brother had proved to be exceptional. Every one of his actions is proof of that statement. "Why is that?" Madara asked seriously. "I killed them all," Naruto confessed, looking his brother straight in the eye. And he did not miss Madara's surprise, but despite that, his brother never looked at him accusingly. "What happened?" Madara asked patiently. Naruto looked away, unable to keep holding his brother's gaze, but Madara grabbed him by the chin, making him look up again. "No matter what happens, or what you have done, or even why, I will always have your back," Madara promised. "Why is that?" Naruto asked sadly. "Because we are brothers." Naruto stared at those eyes and found only truth and love. Madara had always loved her brothers fervently and fought for them as best she could. And although his relationship with Naruto had not been ideal over the years, it had improved a lot in the last year. Since they both lost 3 of their brothers, that pain and suffering forged a bond stronger than anything either boy could have left in their lives. Finally, the younger boy nodded and hesitantly told his older brother about the events that led to such a tragedy. Madara listened with a silent horror that spread through his heart, to be later replaced by rage and disgust. When Naruto finished the story, he was bravely struggling to contain the tears as she looked at her blood-stained hands. "Kin killer," Naruto said with a tired sigh, looking up at the dark ceiling in defeat. Madara glared at him for saying that disgusting word. "Don't say that." He reprimanded him harshly, but Naruto looked at him calmly. "It won't change the truth, brother. That's who I am, and that's how I will continue until I'm executed, Naruto said in a resigned voice, which made Madara fulminate him with an even fiercer look. No one's gonna hurt you, little brother. Not as long as he's still breathing, Madara promised. He surprised the young man by grabbing his hands, stained with blood, and pressing them firmly with his. Will you fight for me? Naruto asked with the slightest hope present in his voice. Do I have a choice? Madara asked with a smile, making Naruto smile,